One more year and then you'll be
Gerry Rafferty's Baker Street is one of the most instantly recognisable and most enduring pop songs ever.
It's just so epic. It's so epic.
I remember thinking, this is just amazing. This is Gerry Rafferty, this is extraordinary, this is Scottish.
It's an astonishing record, and sonically, an amazing piece of work.
When the intro comes in, it sort of sucks you in. It's like you're going through a dark tunnel, but with sort of nice fishy lights flashing. And then you get down to the end of the tunnel, and the doors open, and all the lights come on, and it's da 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 da, and you've gone to Hollywood.
winding your way down on Baker Street, light in your head and dead on your feet. Well, another crazy day. You'll drink the night away and forget about everything.
Then he sings his story, and then the sax riff comes in and hits you again. And then it comes to a whole nother bit where it sort of goes into space, and Huey Burns is going, ear, 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 on his guitar.
I guess you'd call them organic sounds, animal sounds, seagull sounds, anything like that. I wasn't quite sure what to play. They just played me the track a few times. After a few takes, basically that's what came out. So it was just a lucky day for me.
A myth has prevailed that the saxophone player actually wrote the line and was said not given the full credit.
I bet you anything you like, Gerry wrote every note of that solo, because that's what he was like.
It was in the early demos where he played it on a little electric guitar himself.
In 1978, Baker Street was a smash hit on both sides of the Atlantic, clocking up 5 million radio plays in the US to date.
Gerry became, if you like, the voice incarnate of FM radio in America. I remember driving from Los Angeles to Las Vegas, and every channel you hopped from, there was Gerry Rafferty. It was extraordinary.
But the spectacular scale of this success wasn't something that Gerry Rafferty, a deeply private man, readily embraced. His diffidence is evident in this rare public appearance, picking up the award for the best single of 1978 at the British Rock and Pop Awards.
Congratulations, Gerry.
Thanks a lot.
Fantastic. How do you feel at this particular moment?
Absolutely wonderful. Yes.
Terrific.
You better take it. There you go. Congratulations.
Okay.
Thank you. Let's go.
Gerry Rafferty died at the beginning of 2011 at the age of 63. Mourners at his funeral in Paisley included Scotland's First Minister, old friends and fans from as far away as New York. His daughter Martha and her cousins performed one of his songs in the family tradition of singing in harmony.
Whatever's written in your heart, that's all that matters. We'll find a way to say it all someday, yeah.
Rafferty's life is written in the words and music of his songs. Family Tree recalls a childhood with music at its heart.
We can feel the harmonies. You sit there waiting in the wings. How long have you been waiting to let your light shine? Many years have gone since then.
Gerry was the youngest son of a Paisley working-class Catholic family. His older brothers Joe and Jim were both keen on singing.
When I was small, we were singing at parties, myself, my two brothers and all the family and relatives. I was aware that my elder brother Joe would occasionally be singing a different tune from me. And I was really intrigued by this. I said to him, you know, when we were singing a few nights ago, I said, what is that thing that you do when I'm singing and you sing a different tune? He said, oh, it's called harmonising. And within a year or two, I could sing second and a third part harmonies. And it was just like this amazing, magical world opening up.
That song is about the idea of the family coming together, which is very much part of an Irish traditional thing. You know, families would come together and they would sing before they had TV and the internet, and that's what they did, you know, the Raffertys.
When we were young, we used to sing.
My father, he was tone deaf. He was actually physically deaf as well, because he had punctured his eardrum working as a coal miner. But he used to love to tap his foot. He'd be trying to get into the beat. He said, play some with a bit of swing, son.
Was he black, your father?
He's one of the black Irish.
After leaving school, Gerry teamed up with fellow Paisley buddy Joe Egan in beat group Mavericks. In 1966, as The Fifth Column, they made their recording debut.
I don't even think we were in our 20s at that point, you know. Two of the songs we did with the Columbia Records.
They were getting sort of groomed to be a pop band rather than an original sound. They had a song called Benjamin Day, for which Gerald and I collaborated in the words, the lyrics of that.
Straight from a fairy tale. He'd open up
There's a certain tweeness about it, I freely admit. It was kind of, it was more like a children's favourites. But it was a nice tune, yeah. There's a melody to it.
I still recall the stories he would tell us.
And that was a main method of conversation with Gerry Rafferty, was to sing with him, right? He did really let people in who could sing with him.
I think he had decided then that there was a possibility of him making a career out of it, and began writing songs with quite a distinct McCartney-esque influence.
But there's nobody here. I rang the bell and knocked the door. She don't live here.
The single, There's Nobody Here, was not a hit.
It didn't do anything, I have to say, you know. So Gerry, I think, at that point teamed up with Billy Connolly and Tom Harvey and the Humble Bums.
My Dixie darling, listen to this song I sing.
They'd both had hair down to their arses and these buckskin jackets and cowboy boots, stuff like that. And Billy was thrashing away to this banjo like a man possessed.
Gerry came up to me after the concert and said, God, that was funny and I liked your stuff and blah, blah, blah. I'm a songwriter myself, and I thought, oh, God, another one. You know, you were constantly being approached by songwriters in the folk scene, and it was all about rain running down the window and how I miss you, you know. Went up for a few beers to his house and he played the songs. And I thought, who's this guy kidding? He's learned these from a record or something. He never wrote these. It was like Paul McCartney coming up and saying, I write songs, you know, would you like to hear one? Yesterday, what?
Well, hear me talking, blood and glory. I'm fed up walking, blood and glory. I'll tell a story.
So was a symbiotic relationship. Each got so much from the other, and each was an absolute character, an individual in themselves, but together they were great.
Patrick, my primitive painter of art, you will always endeavor.
Artist John Byrne, the inspiration for this song, designed the artwork for the new Humble Bums album, the first of many covers.
We will always be with you, Jockey Melly and me.
I had never heard anything quite like it. I look back at it now and I think, they were just boys. And, for Scottish men in particular to stand up and sing about deep felt emotions like that, I think was difficult. So in some ways I think it suited him quite well to be able to have someone behind whom he could stand.
I was just a guy who knew tunes, knew songs. I still am. But he was a musician and I'll never be one of them.
There were some pretty difficult gigs where an audience was, a student gig or something where the audience was a bit loud and Gerry wanted just total quiet.
And he would not make eye contact with the audience. Now, he had a cast in his eye, and I think it embarrassed him, so he would take an eye line away from people, which, of course, I'm sure many people thought, well, that's very aloof, he's not looking at us, he's not really speaking to us. But I think his work was, that was it, the songs. If that wasn't enough for you, you shouldn't have been there.
I mean, he jumped off the stage once and decked somebody, and we had a police escort out of Taunton. But Gerry probably did more gigs with the Humble Bums than he ever did in the whole of his career after that.
You feel so good when she comes to be with you.
Sometimes I would do a little accompaniment, sometimes I wouldn't. Sometimes I would get ready to do the accompaniment and he would say, I'm doing this on my own. And my footsteps would be heard clunking off into the wings. I thought he would make me better. And he did, but he got better too. So the gap remained of the musical class.
But that became very painful for Billy because what tended to happen was that a lot of emphasis was put on Gerry's material, and then when Billy came to do his stuff, he was kind of almost left on his own, and Gerry would almost go to the pub.
If you go through the Humble Bums albums, you'll find that he's in all of my songs and I'm in none of his. Because he would go into the studio and go over my bits, he'd have me taken off and go over them. Was he right or wrong to do that? I would say right. He was a perfectionist, and perfectionists must perfect. So off he went on his perfecting way.
You say that I am out of touch.
And so, Billy and Gerry parted musical company, each having left an indelible mark on the other.
Well, I saw this large figure of a man striding down Baker Street with a pair of tartan trousers on, and I thought, my goodness, that's Billy Connolly. So I went up and tapped him on the shoulder.
And she said, excuse me, yeah. I'm Martha. Oh, my God. I gave her a cuddle, and then I saw the staggering resemblance to her dad as she was speaking to me.
And I was looking at Billy thinking how much he was like my dad. And also for me it was quite poignant because Billy still had a lot of energy, and I could see a lot of how my dad would have been if he hadn't, started drinking.
We were both piss artists. We were both young and strong, and so it didn't really affect us. It dug in later. And I had a meeting with him in London about 10 years before his death, and we were in Langan's restaurant, and he was drinking Calvados, that apple brandy. He had about 10 or 12 with lunch, and big ones, and I thought, oh, God almighty. So I had read somewhere with alcoholics, you should tell them once and not twice, or ask them, So I said, listen, are you okay with us drinking? Do you feel comfortable with your drinking? And they said, yeah, it's not a problem. I said, okay. And that was all I ever said to him about drinking.
In 1971, the Humble Bunds were still signed to Transatlantic Records. Gerry was given the opportunity to fulfill their contractual obligations by recording a solo album. Featuring collaborations with old friends including Joe Egan, Rab Noakes and John Byrne, it was produced by Hugh Murphy and wryly entitled, Can I Have My Money Back?
I don't hear what you're saying, don't get what you're doing. Can I have my money back, money back, money back? Can I have my money back, please, sir?
During the course of recording Can I Have My Money Back, Gerry invited me to take part in the record on a song, Mary Skeffington, Gerry's mother. It's quite matter of fact, but it's not without passion, it's not without love and respect.
Mary Skeffington, when you wake, you mustn't be afraid to face another day.
It was just the two of us, two voices, two guitars sitting facing each other, which is a nice way to record. I did a little fingerstyle thing, he did a strum.
Look back in a home where you spent the best years of your life. Remember a man who asked you if you would be his wife. Mary Skeffington, close your eyes and make believe that you are just a girl again.
I'm glad it exists like that because it is a kind of representation, if you like, of what we sounded like as Steelers Wheel, the performing Steelers Wheel in the summer of 1971.
But you put something better inside of me.
The formation of Steelers Wheel reunited Gerry with Joe Egan. The band signed to A&M Records and prepared to record their first album. It was to be produced by legendary American songwriters Jerry Lieber and Mike Stoller.
We were a bit in awe of their reputations, of course, you know, and we're just young and just starting out and all that kind of stuff. But they really made us feel, you know, like at ease, you know, just almost immediately. They were great to work with, I thought, anyway.
Of course, they're rock and roll royalty from the time of the 1950s, and they gave it a cachet.
This was 1972, and Lieber and Stoller had already been in the music business for 20 years, writing and producing polished big production hits for artists including Elvis, the Coasters, Peggy Lee, and the Drifters. A&M had high hopes for this transatlantic musical marriage, and Lieber and Stoller brought their own ideas to the production. But so did Gerry.
I think he viewed us as the enemy. There was something very distasteful to him about us, what we represented to him. Crassly commercial, what have you.
I think they kind of met their match in Gerry and Joe, you know, because they kind of dug their heels in, and I think they wanted to do it in the way that they wanted to do it, rather than the way that that Lieber and Stoller wanted to do it.
Gerry was difficult to work with. He was difficult from the get-go, and the band in general drank a great deal. There were cases of brown ale, and there were a few cases of Scotch whiskey in the studio to keep things rolling, I guess. And then, of course, pub hours, everybody ran out around the corner to the Thistle. God, I remember it well. I spent a lot of hours there. We thought that most of what Gerry and Joe were doing was the accompaniment to their songs was pretty much kind of jingy, 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 jangy. I'm not putting it down, that's what it was. And we thought we could enhance that with some of our ideas. cowbell and coins between the strings of the piano, which made them play totally different pitch than the one that you would expect. Just using some elements of that could add a flavor to it that it didn't have to begin with. It took a long time. But in the end, the result was a wonderful result.
Shortly after that, I remember watching the old Grey Whistle Test with Bob Harris. He was interviewing Lieber and Stoller, and he said, and more recently you've been working with Steelers Wheel. How did that go? And they looked at one another and said, pass.
As soon as it started to be successful and it became a hit, he lost interest in it and was suspicious of it and no longer really liked it because it was commercial.
The album was simply entitled Steelers Wheel and was finished in late 1972. Abruptly, Gerry upped and left, leaving Joe to front the band.
Woke up this morning, I get out of bed, too late to go to work, what my dog is dead. I don't try hard, but I get by.
I still don't really know why he left, you know, to be honest. We just never spoke about it, you know, we just felt that he had to do it at that particular time. But it wasn't a good feeling to be left to continue to fulfil contractual engagements and all that kind of stuff that was going on then.
There ain't no use in you complaining.
But we got on with it and did it, you know. We did the Bowie tour and Colin Blunstone tour as well.
I got the feeling that something ain't right.
Joe even had to mime to Gerry's lead vocals in the promotional video for Stuck in the Middle with You, released as a single in spring 1973.
Clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right. Here I am, stuck in the middle with you. Yes,
The song documents an actual night at the table of a London restaurant, with record company executives at one end and potential producers at the other, and business being conducted around Gerry and Joe.
clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right. Here I am, stuck in the middle with you. When you started out with me.
It's just brilliant, and the sentiment of it, you know, everyone sort of felt that sort of like, oh, stuck in the middle with you sort of thing, you know, and he had a great way of making something, a frustration, seem sort of very happy.
That song will go on for absolutely forever. It's in everything, which is great. I love that for songwriters. I love it when they get a golden egg, you know, it's fantastic.
It was very direct production and songwriting that just got straight to the point and did the business and then got out again. And that's why Stuck in the Middle is still a timeless song.
With the success of Stuck in the Middle with You, Gerry was persuaded to return to the band. But all was not well.
I met him on the night of Top of the Pops when they did Stuck in the Middle, and everything seemed to be going for them. They got a huge deal with A&M. I'd met him in a studio, I don't know if it was just before that or just after, with Lieber and Stoller, for God's sake. I thought, God, everything for Gerry is coming good for you now, this is fantastic. And then he told me in the dressing room at Top of the Pops that he was going to not tour with it and knock it on the head. And I think Joe Egan was blissfully unaware of that as he sang it, and I can never see that clip on the repeats at Top of the Pops without thinking that poor man. The self-destruct gene kicked in, and Gerry, you know, kind of canned it. And I don't know why he did that, but he did it several times.
There was so much politics taking place between the whole band and everybody who was involved with the band, and managers and so on and so forth. The live performances we did, most of them were not very good. Everything seemed to be incredibly rushed. We never had time to rehearse properly because we were being sort of taken from a rehearsal studio to go and do interviews, and we were taken from that situation to go and do something else.
You go in it to make music, and unfortunately you end up making music about 20% of the time that you do your job. So the bit that you go to, you know, that you love, about your job, you get to do kind of the least.
That was my first taste of just the nature of the music industry as a beast.
He didn't like being ordered around, basically. You know, he didn't like people telling him what to do. And he had a great distrust of the music business, and it's what he would see is it's machinations and looking for a pound of flesh all the time.
After the release of the 1974 album Fergusley Park, the band split, and Gerry and Joe carried on as a songwriting and recording duo.
So they made you a star. Now your head's in a cloud.
The single Star charted, and the promotional machine started up again, with appearances like this one on German TV.
Look at the set. Imagine hanging around there all day and miming to your record, and you look at the audience, right? There's not a soul you look at there who looks like they want to be there, right? So as the day progresses, you could just see Gerry and Joe thinking, well, let's have a wee bit of fun with this on the one hand, and on the other hand, just really wishing they were somewhere else. They come out of it rather well, I think. It's better than the audience does, who get no points for effort, really, do they?
Yeah, you just had to laugh, you know. I mean, nervously. I mean, like, it didn't seem as if anybody was enjoying themselves at all, you know. So the people that were laughing were us, me and Gerry. The song itself came over pretty well, I thought, anyway, you know, so that was fine.
Gerry and Joe recorded Steelers Wheel's swan song, Right or Wrong, while their management company went bankrupt, leaving Gerry and Joe broke and with legal issues which would take years to resolve.
Went back to Glasgow to lick my wounds and sort of take stock. I knew that I was just going to pursue a solo career. I didn't want to be involved in bands anymore. So I was living in Glasgow, but I was spending a lot of time going back and forth from Glasgow to London to sit in lawyers' offices. And that lasted about 2.5 to 3 years, that period. Oddly enough, it was one of the most productive periods I've ever had in my life.
I was lost on an endless sea, going down, going down, going down.
I basically used the raw material of going back and forth from Glasgow to London for the basis of all of the songs that I wrote there.
His music room was always bang next to my bedroom. So I remember falling asleep most nights to him singing at the piano or the guitar next door. It was something I wish more people had heard, actually. Just the pared down, you know, no big production. So it was lovely background music to my childhood.
Well, here I am, back in town.
Gerry took his songwriting from this period into the studio. Unfettered by band politics and determined to set his own agenda, Gerry delivered to United Artists and himself massive success with 3 solo albums. This was 1977. Punk was making a big noise, and John Byrne was again designing the record sleeve.
Well, the original cover for City to City was a kind of punky-looking guy, fair-haired guy, a young guy, and his nose was split, had a split on it, and he was standing in a kind of the wreckage of a city, and he was wearing a snakeskin jacket and smoking a cigarette. And they said it looked too punky, the record company, and would I please do another one? So I did another one, and it's the better of the 2 covers. I don't know of that. I think they were right.
Yes, I get a little lonely when the sun gets low.
The creative process in the studio making City to City, Night Owl, and Snakes and Ladders was very different from what had gone before, with Gerry now co-producing his own work.
Some people are insecure and they don't want to be overshadowed. Gerry wanted the best people. He wanted really great creative people.
We still got a long way, we still got a long way to go.
I was used to working very fast. That was the way that people did it. He didn't work like that. It was the first time I had come across an artist who was really, really painstaking about every detail. And I would often play a guitar part with different amplifiers, the same part, different guitars, same thing, over and over. And then he would sit down and do an assessment of which one he liked. And he was great. Once you played something that he liked, he knew right away.
So never leave me lonely. Now that you love me only, yeah. And then
It was always an exciting moment when they rolled the tape, because I would hear his, to me, glorious voice, and I would be matching phrasing to a voice that was already there. And that was probably the most exciting backing vocals I've ever done in my life, was singing with Gerry.
I just wanna tell you, you still got that line.
I think he quite liked the way I played because it wasn't flashy, but it suited him really well. It was sensitive, shall we say.
Oh no, no, no. No, no. No, no, no.
You had to be very careful not to pick up Gerry's orange juice in the morning and drink it. Otherwise, you'd be drunk the whole day.
When we were at Chipping Norton for a long time, Gerry would drink and drink and drink, and then his eyes would just narrow and he'd look around the room and he'd just pick a victim and he'd launch into an attack. It was really, really unpleasant. And most of the time the people just sat there and took it. And sometimes it would go on for 15 minutes. You know, it was awful.
There's no point in over-gilding a lily, is there? You can't, you've got to face up. Gerry was, really amusing, could be very sensitive, and wrote sensitive songs and could be very kind, but he could also be very difficult and could be, later on, when drink was taken, it was a bit poisonous.
Quiet, please. Playback.
Sometimes it was all rather chaotic, but I think this is one of the reasons why he worked so closely with Hugh Murphy, because Hugh was able sometimes, I think, to be a conduit for Gerry's thoughts and intentions in the studio.
Hugh was also extremely acerbic. He had a very quick mind, and he could give back to Gerry as good as he got. So on both of those levels, it worked really well. Gerry had a broad vision. I think he had the songs, and then Hugh was the person who put them into the landscape,
It's what they call nowadays a bromance.
Yes, it was.
It was a bromance. It was a romance.
Yeah.
They loved each other, and I think Hugh was really the only person that could put up with Gerry for any length of time, because he was very calm and,
It's gonna be a long night, waiting for the first light. It's gonna be a long night.
Don't you think he was really kind of fanciable, Gerry? He was very charming. Or did you not find that? No.
It's hard
That was
for
just
me
me
to say
then.
because I was in love with Hugh, and Hugh was always there when Gerry
Well, I was in
there.
love with Richard, but it didn't stop me fancying Gerry.
No, well, I was so in love with you, I couldn't fancy anybody else. So
Loser.
So good night, yeah, good night. Good night train, it's gonna carry me home.
And here's Hugh Murphy, Gerry's producer, supporting him on Dutch TV in 1978 by pretending to play the harmonica.
Hugh didn't have to be there at all. Gerry needed him there for moral support. There was no earthly reason why he needed to be sitting there miming harmonica playing, but I think Gerry got really dependent on him in the end.
Watching Hugh sucking and blowing away like that is very funny. It was Paul Jones of Manfred Mann who actually played the harmonica on the track.
Promotional appearances of this kind were anathema to Gerry, and eventually he flatly refused to do any more. His preferred habitat was the recording studio, and his main interest was in writing his songs.
Generally, the melody will come first, the music will come first, and then I will attempt to wed a lyric to the melody once it's complete. When I first started to write lyrics, that was the real hard work for me, and it still is in many ways. And just keep the lyrics as simple as possible, because I never felt I had any way with words.
That's so not true. It's so not true, that. He had a great way with words. That was the thing. It's very, very deceptive. His words are just absolutely the right words for every song that he wrote. And the words are just perfect.
I just want to say this is my way of telling you everything I could never say before.
Right Down the Line is already on my list for my funeral. I've always, always, always preferred songs written by men about women. Something about the way women sing about men that can be very bitter. And then a lot of songs where they do sing about how much they love them, it's in a kind of needy way, or in a kind of like, I'd give up anything for you even if you're going to treat me badly kind of way, which I've never understood. I mean, Right Down the Line, I mean, it's just like basically saying, you know, it's so simple, but I'll just forever, I will always, 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 you know, love you, and it's always been you. And it's just, imagine if somebody wrote that for you. Imagine, you know.
I would try to write my own personal experiences as much as I could. I trusted my intuition in that way. And I wasn't afraid to, not in every song, there was lots of songs that wasn't the case, but there was a fair number that were to do with my own inner world.
I have sung Gerry Rafferty songs all my life, even when I was singing in folk clubs. So we're going back to the late 60s, early 70s, you know, when I first met Gerry. As time went on, I've covered a lot of his songs. I did the Royal Mile, but I'm probably best known for singing The Right Moment.
Spinning on another wheel, going round in slow motion, caught up in another dream, drifting on a blue ocean.
All of his songs have always spoken to me. There's something to do with the melodic structure and something very sad in the writing, which has always appealed to me, but it's never sentimental.
You remember and then you forget, all along the way.
He doesn't use a lot of fancy poetic terms. He doesn't cloak what he's saying in sort of mystic mumbo-jumbo. He gets to the point. And I think almost uniquely, you could listen to the songs down the years and connect them with what you later find out was going on with his private life.
Out on the street, I was talking to a man. He said there's so much, but there's nothing mine that I don't understand. You shouldn't worry, I said, that ain't no crime. 'Cause if you get it wrong, you'll get it right next time.
Gerry may have chosen to reveal aspects of his life in his songs, but he did not want his life altered by the unwelcome personal attention that comes with being a household name.
Once you enter into the world of celebrity, you can no longer really be the observer in life, and I've always valued that highly. You become the observed.
And other people who wallowed in that kind of acclamation and excess, it was like a drug to them. They couldn't stop. And it wasn't like a drug to him. It wasn't even like a bag of sweeties. It wasn't like anything. It was just, he didn't want to do it, and he refused to do it.
sunsets. Welcome to Hollywood.
Despite massive airplay and huge sales there, Gerry never played a single gig in the US.
I have huge respect for Gerry for not ever pandering to the demands of record companies to promote work in a certain way, to go out and, as he probably saw it, prostitute himself live, playing gigs he didn't feel like playing, simply in order to shift product. And good for him for sticking two fingers up at the system and saying, actually, no, you don't have to do any of that, and I'm not going to.
So sweet.
I wanted success and fame, and I got it to a degree. Gerry wanted respect. He wanted his talent to be respected. He wanted his songs to be respected, and he certainly got that.
Well, there's another Japanese Zen saying, which states that if you get too famous, you'll go straight to hell.
I came to you when no one could hear me. I'm sick.
Linda Thompson sang backing vocals on Night Owl, and she and then husband Richard toured with Gerry in the UK. In 1980, they were without a record deal, and Gerry raised the finance and produced an album for them, the bootleg of which has come to be known as Rafferty's Folly.
It never got released. That was the thing, you know, we did it and Richard didn't like it because it was a little bit slick, i.e. in tune. And it was all the things that Gerry was, you know, which was very perfectionist about the tempo and very perfectionist about the tuning. And there was no auto-tune in those days, so you would just, you know, kind of do things over and over. And Richard didn't like it very much, so we redid it. But actually, it's a very good record. He did a great job. He was extremely funny, and he was very romantic. You know, he'd have these crushes on people, and when we were on tour, we got on decided to run away together. We were both married, mind you, and we got on the train. By the end of the train journey, we would look at each other, going, "This is not a good idea." So I don't think anything ever came of these crushes that you had on people. He'd sort of say to people, "I love you," and blah blah blah. But it was just a fun, romantic thing, I think, for him to do with the music, maybe.
After the Richard and Linda experience, the only other artists Gerry ever produced were the Proclaimers. This is the original acoustic version of Letter from America.
When you go, well, you send back a letter from America.
We initially did a demo down at Gerry's house, you know, and a fantastic studio that I had down there, and that was the best studio we'd been in, and that was his home studio, you know. So it was pretty intimidating.
The other day, I spent the evening thinking about all that float away.
I was 87 and we'd been playing that song since about 84. So it's hard to really imagine it being any other way, you know. But the way he built the arrangement around the actual song itself, you could hear from the start that it would work. You know, you could hear and it finished up a lot better than I think we'd imagined.
When you go, well, you send back a letter from America. Take a look up the rail track from Miami to Canada. Look up on my way.
He kind of took us aside at some point when we had a cup of tea and said, "Look, this is still your song," and you know we knew it. We didn't feel that it in any way really been taken apart at all. It was just added to. There was an arrangement built round the song. The integrity of the song was maintained.
When you go, well, you send back a letter from America.
I think the really interesting thing about Letter from America is how great the production is, that it's absolutely simple and direct. It's everything that Lieber and Stoller brought to Stuck in the Middle with You, and which Gerry in some ways seemed unable to bring to bear on his own work because he felt he had to kind of live up to a reputation of making another Gerry Rafferty record that would be matched up with Baker Street, rather than cutting to the chase and getting to the essence of what the song was about. And when he was producing another artist, I think he was able to do that and see the folk tradition that came into it, and the beautiful directness of that, and not spoil it, not clutter it up, not cover it in 80s synths or anything, but just get to the song. And, of course, he delivered them a massive, massive hit.
Gerry Rafferty would never again have the commercial success of the late 70s, but he kept on making his music his way. North and South, released in 1988 as his marriage to Carla was breaking down, is a window into his life at that time.
That was an album that I remember just playing again and again and again, because it came out at a time when I was coming to the end of a long relationship as well. And every track on that album seemed to me to say something about my life. You know, I was living in exile down south. I was in a relationship where hearts were running dry, and it just felt like kind of the soundtrack of my life at that point.
Moonlight and gold, midsummer magic as the night turns to day and songbirds greet the dawn.
Moonlight and Gold is a recurring theme for him, the metaphor of the day being life.
You watch and wonder while the moon fades away and one more day is born.
These are the songs of a 40-year-old as opposed to the songs of a 25-year-old.
We spent hours, literally hours on the phone. He had split from his wife and stuff like that, and I think that was probably one of the, big reason for keeping in touch. And of course I offered my services anyway, to if he needs an ear to bend or whatever, and so the 90s were taken up, quite a lot of the 90s were taken up with Gerry phoning and talking away. But of course, during the conversation, on many occasions, he would, he'd get really drunk, that was unable to continue the conversation. So here I go again, and I don't want to speak about this, this stuff.
I think the most interesting period of his post-Baker Street career was actually 92 to 94, because he made 2 albums there, which were a major return to form. And Life Goes On as a song, he was so important to him that he revisited it with his final album. He came back to that song and brought it back because he felt it hadn't had the attention it deserved. And it's clearly about Carla, and it's clearly heartfelt. And I think that's probably his strongest song. It's got the most gorgeous, powerful chorus that sweeps you up and carries you along.
And your life
And I think it took the breakup with his wife to put him into the idea that he had to get back down to brass tacks. He had to really roll his sleeves up and get back to what he was good at. And he got back with Joe Egan, and they made a couple of really, really strong albums there.
Every night's a lonely night since you went away, but you come back to haunt my memory.
Gerry installed a studio at his home and worked there with Hugh Murphy on the last 2 albums they made together.
Following his divorce, Gerry and I had the chance for the first time to sort of spend a lot of time together at Tye Farm, where he was in Sussex, where he was living at that time. And I used to go over there every couple of weeks, and we'd spend the day writing. And we actually spent a lot of the time laughing. I mean, we shared a sense of the ridiculous, and we laughed like drains for much of the time. I mean, that's one of my prevailing memories of it.
Over the years, Gerry played again and again with familiar old musical friends. Guitarist Hugh Burns enjoyed a long-standing creative relationship with him.
Gerry understood and loved at a very deep level Scottish music. And many, many times he would ask me to alter the harmonies to sound more Celtic, more Scottish. And I think that influenced his music quite a bit. And if you have the guitar in this kind of tuning, you can hear the influence of pipes, the influence of that kind of...
Of the relationships in Gerry's life forged in music, one of the most important, with Hugh Murphy, ended with Hugh's early death in 1998.
I think that was a great blow to Gerry, because they had such a long relationship that it was a unique working relationship, I think. And I think it took Gerry a little while to find somebody else to work with in that particular capacity, the engineering side, etc., etc. And Giles came on board, and I thought it was a great moment for Gerry because I think he had found somebody who was incredibly supportive to what he was doing and who was happy with his particular working methods.
Together with Giles Twigg, Gerry travelled to Barbados, France, Tuscany and the north of Scotland with portable recording equipment. The result of this semi-nomadic period was the 2000 album Another World, which, as always, reflected his real life.
When Xavier and Anna were born.
Xavier and Anna is a song about Tilda Swinton and John Byrne's children.
The reason for being was clear when they opened their eyes.
I would have to say, in all honesty, the one record or the one main record that they made together is perhaps the record of Gerry's I would be least likely to turn to as an album, just simply because I think Giles did not have the same kind of dialogue with Gerry as Hugh had. And the record is just slightly overworked and there's not nearly enough heart left in it.
My girlfriend's in Albania, my ex-wife's in Tasmania, and I'm in Transylvania with the vampires all around.
The album Another World was originally only available through Gerry's website. Access to the internet allowed Gerry Rafferty fans to meet online.
It's a very tight-knit group of real Gerry Rafferty fans, people who feel the same way as I do. It's generally talking about his music and discussing songs in great detail and people trying to pick out their top 10 Gerry Rafferty, which is an impossibility. You can't pick 10 Gerry Rafferty tracks. You have to have a top 50.
I think once people kind of get his music, it sort of stays with them their whole life. And I know that a lot of the fans, they speak about his music as having sort of helped them through, times of real, trouble, a wife leaving them or something. And his music, people relate to it. That meant a lot to him, I think.
2009's Life Goes On demonstrates Gerry's continued interest in reworking his back catalogue. It also reflects his wide musical interests, from the Beatles and Mozart to Irish folk songs and Christmas carols.
That was Gerry putting his house in order, that he's taken all the songs that really mattered to him, the themes, the cover versions of other things that were significant to him, and has brought it together in a high production value package where there's not a weak track in there. It's all beautifully produced. It's immaculately tended and cared for. And he was gathering together everything that mattered to him and putting it out there, really as a kind of goodbye. We didn't know it at the time, but I think he felt he had to make his mark and leave something behind of lasting value.
We were linked by what we had come through. Like Catholic school and all that. We sang a lot of hymns in the car on the way to gigs. We used to love hymns. On his last album, just before he died, he had Kyrie eleison. And I was on the phone to him and he said it was a Coptic Christian version.
I think harmony was central to my dad because of what it evoked in him as a human being. You know, it's harmony makes a person feel connected, you know, connected to the universe and to what's around you, and it's the way that things all come together and create something of beauty.
There are those who say that Gerry in his life and in his relationships perhaps didn't give enough of himself. And I can understand why they say that, given the kind of temperament he had. But since he died, I think I've come to the view that he gave us the music, and maybe that's legacy enough. And that's how I feel about it now. And yes, he could be an absolute rascal, as everybody knows, but he was our rascal.
When I think of him laughing, playing the guitar, singing with Rab and me singing on whatever's written in your heart.
At least we got our memory.
Just loving him so much.
Whatever's written in your heart, that's all that matters.
It was a 40-year existence, really, of writing songs and making music and making great records, pretty much all of which are built to last.
He used to say to me that once he couldn't sing anymore, then that would be it. And actually, that was exactly what happened.
They went unafraid and sober. Yeah. And with a wonderful legacy.
Played this game now for a long, long time.
I was texting memories and things, and he was laughing, and you know, we laughed right up to the very end. And he knew it was time to go, and he went.
Whatever's written in your heart, that's all that matters. Yeah.